I'd like to call the September 13th Board of Education meeting to order. Are we in compliance with open meeting laws?
Yes, we are.
Perfect. May you call the roll.
Wyman.
Here.
Carlin.
Here.
DeWitt. Here. Herzog.
Here.
Carnes.
Here.
Salaji.
Here.
Wright.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. And now I'd like to welcome back our students to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Tonight we have Zariah Pavlik, Zaire Pavlik from Webster Stanley, and we also have Emma Goggins and Eva Goggins. If you could come right over here. That's perfect. And if you'd like to start, we will follow.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And if you could stay there for just a second. We have a certificate of appreciation for you joining us this evening. Okay, first one is Eva. Thank you very much. And Zaire. Thank you very much. Zariah. Thank you very much. And Emma. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for being with us tonight. It's the students that really make our district what it is, so we really appreciate your time and effort. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Dr. Davis, the land acknowledgement.
Yes, as we gather today, we would like to acknowledge that in Oshkosh, we are on the ancestral homelands of the Ho-Chunk Nation and the Menominee Indian Tribe of Wisconsin, who lived along the western shores of Lake Winnebago, Wisconsin's largest freshwater lake entirely within its border. We acknowledge these indigenous sovereign communities who have stewarded this land throughout the generations and pay respect to their elders, past and present. We welcome the duty and opportunity to share stewardship of these lands.
Thank you very much.
Point of order. Principal Galeazzi was here to speak.
Oh, well, wonderful. Principal Galeazzi, would you like to take the stage, please?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for inviting us and having us here to say the pledge and give a little update on Webster Stanley. As you know, this year Webster moved to Merrill Middle School as they are working on building Menominee. And I just wanted to share that the teachers did a lot of planning and preparation to make it a smooth transition, everything from setting up their classrooms to planning routines that were in a completely new school setting. So where do we enter? How do we safely use stairs? Because Webster didn't have any stairs. A new lunchroom routine, new bathroom routines, and I just wanted to share that the students are doing great. I don't think there were I wouldn't even know we were in a different building. So the students were very flexible and adaptable. And I think I contribute a lot of that too, even though we're in a new building, we still have a lot of the same structures in place. The students have their same safekeepers, which are the trusted adults, and they still have their familiar school family. So it was really, I think, very nice for us all to know how smooth this transition went, and then looking forward, taking off some of that anxiety, because we've kind of done it once already. Some of the other things we've been working on are doing some really intentional planning for our processes and procedures when we're thinking about uniting our 3 school communities. Some of that planning includes, before school started, we held all 3 of our schools did in-service together. And then going forward, when we have our Friday professional developments, all 3 schools will come together for those PDs. And then we also combined our conscious discipline action team that all 3 schools plan together and then present together at those Fridays. And then as far as just unique to Webster and Merrill, we've been working on doing things to unite our students. Some of that includes they are having lunch together and they are having their recesses at the same time. And then we are holding one all-school morning meeting every other week, and we hope in the future to be able to Zoom in Washington also. And then we've been working to unite the staff. Some of the things we planned for uniting the staff is we have specials are all at the same time for grade levels, so that gives the teachers a common planning time. And then that allows them to work with their ISTs and PLCs to plan together. And then we also gave our ISTs grade level bands of teachers to work with instead of the whole K-5, which really allows them to do student-centered coaching and go more in depth because they don't have such a broad range. So with all of those things we're putting into place now, we're really looking forward to the future and looking forward to the transition as we continue to unite our school families and move on to Menominee. Do you have any questions?
It's very exciting. You're going to have a very busy year.
Yes, but it's good work.
It sure is. Thank you for everything you do for the district and the kids.
Thank you.
Thank you, Beth.
Okay, next we have our public hearing on the proposed budget for 2023-2024, and I'd like to call that meeting to order. A budget hearing will be held on Wednesday, September 13th, 2023 at 6 o'clock in the boardroom of the Oshkosh Area School Board of Education Administration Office located at 215 South Eagle Street, Oshkosh, Wisconsin. A detailed copy of the budget will be available on Friday, September 15th, 2023 at the administration office or by contacting Drew Nehans at 920-424-0122. A summary of the budget is printed on the sheet I am reading from, but you can also receive that from Mr. Nehans. Okay. Thank you. Presentation of the budget.
Yes, good evening. Included in your materials was more detail within the budget, so we will go over the high level of what we have. So first you can kind of see we work on the budget almost year-round. We'll start next year's budget actually as soon as we get done with this meeting, and later this week we start on the next year. So it really is a 12-month calendar that we're looking at that for. So some of the key factors that are impacting our upcoming budget are we did get a very good biennium budget from the state. So for the first time in a very long time, we got some really sizable increases. We got the revenue ceiling limit to come up from $10,000 to $11,000 per student. So that really had a little bit more than a $6 million additional impact from what we were projecting earlier in spring. So there was a very good budget revenue-wise for us from the state. Impact that's going to happen on the revenue and expense side is the ESSER funds. We've utilized the majority of our ESSER funds at this point. We're down to around $3 to $3.5 million of ESSER funds left as we close out last fiscal year. And then probably one of the bigger somewhat surprises is the health plan is currently running a plan year deficit. So we had just about a $4 million swing in what we were hoping to have for a budget for the health plan and where we are actually going to be funding that. So here are some of the, a nice little chart to show some of the additions and where we've gone down. I really do want to kind of highlight the state sources. Our state aid has increased significantly. We've increased state aid this year by $6.5 million. And what that means for our taxpayers is that the state is paying $6.5 million that would have been captured by our local taxes. But because of how the aid calculation is, we've been able to shift a lot of that burden more back onto the state. We've been doing this for well over 5 years of really shifting more and more of the revenue sources we get to the state and away from the local taxpayers. So on the expenditure side, you can see a little bit of our differences. We did have some staffing efficiencies that we had discussed earlier with the board in April as we went through that process. We do have some increases in administration. Part of the business administration is how we are coding certain expenses. We've taken a lot of the non-capital and capital expenses like furniture and bleachers and some of those that happen in the buildings. And instead of coding those to a function level at the building level, we've brought them up to the district, and they get housed in my department now at the business office for accounting purposes. And we are doing that to get better pricing and better control as a district to automate some of that. You will notice transfers are going to be down. That's transfers from Fund 10 to Fund 27. Payments to other schools, the increase there, the vast majority of that is coming through voucher increases. Part of the state biennium increased the voucher program. There were significant increases to that. I would anticipate that our voucher expense and tax levy for next year is going to come in somewhere between 6 and 7 million. We're significantly below that right now, so that is going to have a large impact. Again, that's not going to be known to us until October 15th when the state certifies that. But I would expect that number to jump fairly significantly.
Excuse me, so that number would be, the money going to the vouchers would be equal pretty much to the state aid increasing by 6.5 million from your previous slide. Is that correct?
No, the total voucher amount
right.
will be. The state aid increase was just increased from the prior year.
Mm-hmm.
But correct.
Okay.
Can you explain how that works? Because I don't think most taxpayers understand.
The vouchers?
How we get money and how we distribute money through the voucher program.
Sure. So on October 15th, the state plugs in, we get what's called a revenue limit worksheet. The state certifies property valuations and the voucher enrollment at that time. So they plug a number in. They don't really give us a breakdown of what or where that goes. We can do some digging and try to get some guesses on where that is and where it goes. But they just give us very much just a number plug. And that's the number it is. So we've got, I believe, 5 voucher schools within our district, and they all have different enrollment levels within that. So again, my guess is we're going to be somewhere between 6 and 7 million based on last year's enrollment. It's probably going to be closer to 7 million than 6.
Question. What was the voucher impact last year?
I believe it was 4.9 million.
Thank you.
And they raised the voucher amount this year?
Correct. The elementary raised a little bit more than 1,100, I believe it was, and the high school was closer to 2,000 or right around that dollar amount. They got larger increases than we got, but again, our budget was very nice for us.
And how does that levy or those changes affect the tax levy?
It is going to, the property taxpayers will see an increase in their overall mill rate. What the board has been doing for the last several years is a mill rate management system, where in the past we were looking at a $9.41 mill rate collectively. With such a large increase to the vouchers, what we've shifted to is, if we take vouchers off historically, we've been running the district operation tax levy, total tax levy at $8.75. So the mill rate management side of what we are doing is based on that $8.75. And then anything, when we add the vouchers in, anything above that is really voucher impact. So this year is what we're proposing in this year's budget. Right now, if everything held true, we'd be looking at an $8.73 cent mill rate without the vouchers. With the vouchers, it's going to be closer to $9.55 to 60 cents.
Okay.
So, and again, in October, when we set the tax levy, we'll have more graphics and more actual information at that time, because everything will be known. Right now, we're still estimating and kind of guessing a little bit.
Mrs. Szilagyi.
Yeah, so I have two questions. The first one is, so, correct me if I'm wrong, we report, like we're doing right now, the amount of money the state gives us, the federal government gives us, we report all of that, and we also report how it's spent. The schools that we send vouchers to, do they make a report of the total that they receive from taxpayers? So sorry, that was a question.
I know they have some reporting to the state of some kind. I honestly am not aware of
So-
that. And they don't follow our policy and what we have to do with DPI as far as auditing, and we get audited by an independent auditor, and then DPI auditors audit us.
Yeah,
So we get audited twice
Twice.
every year. I don't believe they follow that same structure.
and, well, I'm thinking more as like a public citizen, if I wanted to know how much public tax money a private school is receiving, is that readily available information?
I do have that information. It takes a little digging.
Okay.
It would probably be a little cumbersome and hard for a
I'm already thinking
typical
of how I'd have
taxpayer
to do
to
it.
find.
I'd have to go to DPI, see how many individual
There-
students they have enrolled,
There-
divide all that by the
yes.
6 million. Yes, my brain's like trying to figure out, that's a lot of work to figure out how much each individual school gets.
Correct. It's not very readily available. That is something that I would anticipate would be in my report at the tax levy certification at the end of October.
And then my next question is, if we have a student that lives in our boundaries and they go to a private school in a different community, say St. Mary's up in Neenah, for example, we pay for that voucher, is that correct?
We would pay if we don't have the denomination of that religion school within our boundaries.
Yeah.
So as long as we have that religion
Oh,
established as a school in our boundaries, then we do not pay for an outside.
okay.
So if we had no Lutheran school in Oshkosh, we would pay for a Lutheran school in Neenah or Appleton.
Okay, but we
if
wouldn't
that
for a
was.
Catholic or
But if
for
we
a
have
Christian.
one,
Okay.
then no.
Thank you.
They
I've
have
never-
they have an in-district Catholic option.
Okay.
So no, we would not pay for that.
Yeah. Thank you
Yep.
for clarifying all the questions that are running through my head right now.
So we can be really fiscally responsible with our money, with the district's money, and changes to the voucher program can change the district's levy limit that we have no control over.
Correct.
I think that's clear for the public to know. That changes from the state legislature, which is fine, right? But that does have an impact on local taxpayers. You know, so it's not all up to us here, you know, to exactly determine those parts of the levy, correct?
Correct.
All right, thanks.
Okay. Let's move on.
Okay.
Good discussion.
So, everyone's pretty familiar with Funds 10 and Fund 27. We talk about the operational funds a lot. One thing a couple things I want to highlight are some of the other funds that don't get a lot of attention, that I also think are important to have, especially when we're setting the budget. So our debt levy that we have, Fund 38 and Fund 39, especially Fund 39. Fund 39 is anything referendum related. So our Phase 1, the Val Phillips, the Menominee Elementary, those all fund under Fund 39. The levy management that we had talked about and how that was working to manage and keep our tax levy at a set, more of a set amount. What that's allowed us to do is pay off debt early. And one thing we have worked into this budget and what we're proposing in this is an additional early payoff of Fund 39 debt. What that will do is that'll save $1.8 million of interest in 2024, and it's going to collect an additional $3.3 million of state aid for next budget year. So paying off $24 million of debt now not only helps get us ready for adding next debt in Phase 2 and down the road, it's structuring us to be able to get us right-sized on our debt management, It's also having serious impacts on what we pay on debt, on interest, and then what the kind of state aid we're able to capture. So in the last 2 years, that would be $3.1 million of interest savings and a little bit more than $5.1 million of state aid from the last 2 years of paying debt out early.
So we're talking 8.2.
8.2 million of benefit for the taxpayers in the last 2 years, correct. And that's on top of the, so to date, from what we had projected when we went to referendum, to date, we're over $40 million in savings on interest and collected state aid. That number would be closer to the mid-40s.
Can you say that again?
It would be the collective when you talk about interest savings and state aid captured, additional state aid, from what we projected doing 3 bondings and the interest rates to what we truly are at right now, is in the $40 to $45 million range that we've saved taxpayers.
And that's since the last referendum was passed?
Correct.
And the total of that referendum was how much?
107 million.
So that's over 40% of that was saved.
Well, we were looking at, if you include the interest, we were looking at about a $162 million project, and we've got that down to about 124 million.
Can you, what line are we talking about? Is this 185, the total revenue and other financing sources? These numbers, I'm just trying to follow.
No, you'd be looking at here on the Fund 39 debt. The revenues is going to be about $30 million, and then our expenses will be the 30 million.
Okay.
What number on the left-hand
178.
column, Drew?
I think.
On your page.
Yep.
It's 178.
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
178, just the
It's
line
178.
number.
The line
Oh,
number.
sure.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I was referring
Yep.
to.
Yeah, so it's
what-
line
what line you were on,
171.
Just to follow. Thank you.
Sorry. So the capital improvement fund is another one that we'll have a conversation, more conversations around. Fund 46, right now is a little bit hard to see because that gets jumbled in with Fund 49, which is the fund we use to expense all of the projects for the referendum. But Fund 46, we want to start doing management of that fund as well. Within our long-term structuring of how we want to set ourselves up. So in the future, we're going to want to see the revenue on line 185. We're going to want to see that revenue starting to creep up into the $1 million plan mark or above that, and really trying to structure and fund what our annual maintenance or deferred maintenance would potentially be, so we don't get into deferred maintenance amounts that we've been in over the last 10 to 20 years. So that'll be a line item that we're going to need to see grow in the next several budgets. So then overall, a recap of what all of the funds are, just at a very high level. Again, this won't balance because Fund 49 is all expenses at this point. We're not seeing revenue. We've already bonded or done our notes for that. So really, we are just looking at expenses on that side. So we would never expect these two totals to match, but they should be pretty close when you look at Funds 10s and 20.
Can you talk a little bit about Fund 80, Community Service, and the benefit that that brings to the community?
Yes, we're a little different in Oshkosh than most cities. Most municipalities have the rec department as part of the city. It's part of the parks department. It'd be a park and rec. We have structured it in the city under the school district. What the taxpayers are getting is the programming that the rec does. The advantage we have as a school district is we, as a school district, own the vast majority of the gyms that are going to be in a community. So the rec department has better access into gyms for programming. They do have their own building that does senior programming out of it. They do senior pickleball, they've got volleyball, they've got basketball. They've got a lot of adult programming that goes on in there. The rec department's budget is increasing a little bit as we've been expanding, so they're looking at a $3 million budget. It had been about $2.7 million in the past. So they are creeping up, but their programs that they're offering and their attendance has also increased quite a bit. So they have a variety of different programming from toddlers all the way up through senior citizens, a variety of different things. Most of their offerings are free or very low cost. There are some that are more of a pass-through, like ballroom dancing. We offer that, and we offer that for what we feel is an affordable price. It's a lot less than what you would do if you just called a regular instructor and joined a class.
It's a wonderful asset to our community, and it's great to see that it's growing.
So, in the budget, what does this mean for taxpayers? I'll try to get this a little bit bigger for people that are here. So again, this is a budget, and to try to get people in the community to understand what that budget boils down to them, is they think of it as the tax levy or the mill rate. So this is the calculation that kind of does that out. So there's going to be moving parts on this. We haven't gotten the third Friday count, so we are using our best guess to say this is what the number of students we're going to have on a 3-year rolling average. So this number is going to change, which will change the total tax impact. But this number is going to change. Here's our increase to the per pupil amount. And then, so this is our actual revenue authority, 118 million and change. So then you subtract the state aid out, and we get our local funds, and then what we have for debt service, and then our rec department. So our total tax levy, we're looking at $72 million. And property values did increase, so the tax levy has gone up approximately 12%. Property valuation went up 10%. There is a correlation there, again, as we try to do, manage our mill rate based on our debt. So there is a connection there. So we're looking at somewhere in the approximately the 951 range based on these numbers. Again, there's guessing on vouchers, enrollments, and some other numbers included in that. Are there any other questions?
How has inflation affected our budget this year? It's a broad question, but it's, real.
So-
Have we seen increases in different areas because of it?
Yes, and this is for this year, one of the really good things with the state biennium is they gave us that $1,000 increase
Okay.
per pupil. So that's going to help in this year's budget. Moving forward, though, we aren't earmarked to get the per pupil increases that are based on inflation, so it is going to flip. We are okay with inflation currently from what the first year in the biennium has.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Nehans?
I have one.
Mr. Carnes?
Does the amount received through the biennium change any of the negotiations with any of the groups that happened before then?
No, and for the reason that the health plan, really, we had to readjust that health plan by roughly $4 million.
Yeah.
So at that point, it really kind of limited the ability to come back with anything
Okay.
that we could open that discussion with.
Sounds good.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
We'll now accept public comment about the budget, and these are the guidelines for the public. Clearly state your name and address. If you're acting as spokesperson for a particular group of individuals, please indicate the group that you represent. Please limit your comments to the time allotted, which is 3 minutes. Public comments should be made rather than a question-answer dialogue. Please state matters of concern clearly and concisely. Please also remember the use of specific names of district personnel may lead to legal liability. In such instances, please pursue the district's formal complaint process by contacting the superintendent's office at 424-0160 to direct you to the appropriate administrator.
Thank you.
And it appears that we have no one signed up for our public hearing on budget. Okay. Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second, Barb.
Kearns and Herzog?
Yes.
Carlin?
Aye.
DeWitt? Aye. Herzog?
Aye.
Kearns?
Aye.
Salaji?
Aye.
Wright?
Aye.
Wyman?
Aye.
This portion of the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you. We will now be moving into the normal part of our board meeting. Are we in compliance with open meeting laws?
Yes, we are.
Roll call, please.
DeWitt? Here. Herzog?
Here.
Kearns?
Here.
Salaji?
Here.
Wright?
Here.
Wyman?
Here.
Carlin?
Here.
We have a quorum.
The next is the approval of the agenda. Is there anyone on the board that would like to change the order of items on the agenda? Seeing none, we will accept the agenda as presented by acclamation. Okay, board president's report. We have just 2 retirements today. Thank you. And the first one is Andy Brown. He's the technology and engineering teacher at Oshkosh West, and he has been employed with the district since 2000. And Dawn Pomeraning, administrative assistant at Oshkosh North High School. She has been there since 1996. Does anyone have any comments they'd like to share with either of these? Dr. Herzog.
Thank you. I've had the opportunity, the pleasure, over time of visiting Mr. Brown's classroom, and I've always been impressed with his rapport with students and his knowledge of content. And Dawn Pomeraning, I've had the privilege of working with in her role as an administrative assistant. She's always helpful and friendly. We certainly want to I certainly want to wish these individuals a long, healthy, and happy retirement and thank them for their contributions to our students and our district over these many years.
Thank you very much. I'm sure those feelings are felt by the entire board. Thank you very much for the service. Okay, Dr. Davis, superintendent's report.
All right, so first of all, I'm excited to introduce our student board representatives for the 23-24 school year. So just want to give some introductions for Eva and Charlotte here, and then we'll once a month have them check in on their reports. And so let me just start with some introductions, and then I'll go through a little bit of what we can expect for the year. So Eva Miller is a senior at Oshkosh North. She participates in the female a cappella group, the Spartonettes, Madrigals, Feminist Student Union, Sources of Strength, Student Council, School Musicals, all three choirs at Oshkosh North High School, and Oshkosh Youth Choir. Eva has a part-time job at Route 21, and most importantly, plans to go to school and become a high school choir teacher.
Yay.
Applications are available in the HR office in 4 years. So welcome, Eva. So thanks for joining us. Charlotte Stelflug. So Charlotte's a senior at Oshkosh West High School. She's involved in the Student Council, Spanish Club, O'Neill Honor Society, and Oshkosh Youth Symphony and Oshkosh West Symphony Orchestra. Charlotte most recently worked as a lifeguard at the Amaro Family Aquatic Center. Over the summer, she plans to go to UW Eau Claire to major in biology with the hopes of becoming a genetic counselor. So welcome, Charlotte, to the team. So if board members and community can remember, last year we expanded the roles of our student board representatives to include an opportunity for students to bring topics and lead in different ways. And so after a full year of that, we did some reflections and have some improvements from last year. So we're going to continue to have Eva and Charlotte have the opportunity to bring roles together. One of the things that we learned from last year is that we obviously have very busy students. We want to be mindful of their time. So when last year we scheduled bringing a topic per month coming, that seemed a little bit heavy. So what we've talked to Eva and Charlotte, and got some feedback from last year's representatives to come back and have reports 3 times a year. So we're going to look at November, February, and May as times where they'll come back and provide some reports back to the board on a particular topic. Those topics are to be determined at this point because they want a little bit of chance to get into the school year and get some feedback from their peers. From the very beginning, we're looking at mental health support, possibly post-high school support, and looking at graduation requirements. So those are just some topics that we've initially talked about, but certainly they're going to be coming back and refining that a little bit. So just really thrilled to be able to continue to have student representatives on the board of such high caliber. So welcome to the group. We're looking forward to your insight, and again, you're members of this board. So for our meetings, your voice is important. So at any time, if you'd like to speak, you have the ability to be able to do that within our protocols. So your voice is very important. You are two of the over 9,000 reasons of why we do our work, and so representing is really important. So, and thank you for your extra commitment of time. So with that, we'll also continue our presentations on a monthly basis of what's going on at each high school. So it looks like we're going to start with Eva tonight with checking in with Sparty. So, Eva.
Hi, thank you for being here. I named this presentation Checking with Sparty. Starting the year off Spartan Strong. North staff officially started the school year on August 22nd, and on August 24th, Student Council Exec Board welcomed back staff for the Verve-sponsored breakfast of bagels, muffins, fruits, and beverages. North Student Council has also welcomed new advisors, Ms. Munig, a communities teacher, Ms. Erickson, this year's senior counselor, and Mr. Griffith, a business ed teacher. Welcoming North's new principal. While Ms. Lass is not a new face at North, as she has been assistant principal for many years, we are very excited to welcome her as our new principal and excited to see all the things she will accomplish. We also welcomed our new dean of students, Mr. Cheeley, who previously taught history and economics classes. Renovations and an update to rules. North got a big update with the added check-in, check-out station by our main entrance door 1. There is an additional wall as well as double doors to increase security. Students are very happy to hear that hats are now allowed to be worn in school, as long as they are school appropriate. Many students now feel like they can express themselves more openly. ONHS Choirs. Oshkosh North Choirs is also doing something new. This year's fall concert on October 11th theme is a choral feast. They are putting together a food drive with Oshkosh Food Pantry. Homecoming. North Student Council is already hard at work at organizing homecoming. The exec board and homecoming chairs have met twice during the summer and are making good progress on planning homecoming. This year North's homecoming week is October 2nd through the 7th, with a dance on Saturday the 7th. The theme this year is a walk in fantasy. Fall sports. Our football team has already had a couple of games, as well as our boys soccer team. Our volleyball team had their tryouts in August and have had a couple matches. Our tennis team had their last home game of the season yesterday against Appleton East and took home a win. Our dance team has also been hard at work and are very excited for the start of the athletic season. Thank you for checking in with Sparty.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eva. All right.
All right. So what's going on, Wildcats? To start off, going off some of what Eva said, West also has a new secure entrance at door 38, which does make students feel a lot more secure with the fact that there is something and someone helping to block anyone who could be a potential threat. All right, so some past events. We've got all of our fall sports going. Our varsity football team has 2 wins, 2 losses. Varsity soccer, 4 wins, 1 loss, and 1 tie. Girls volleyball has 13 wins and 5 losses. And varsity tennis has 10 wins and 5 losses. Girls golf is also happening, as well as girls swim, and the dance team has begun their season as well. For upcoming events, we have homecoming. West homecoming is September 25th through the 30th, nice and early, so all of us are on our toes and running around already. We have our Spirit Week dress-up days. WR activities include Ironman volleyball and powder puff football. We have a parade on Friday, as well as a pep rally during W hour. We have our football game, which is at our home turf at West High School. And our dance is Saturday, 8 to 11, and our theme is A Night in New York. We also have a food drive, which is a competition among all 4 high schools, and we are doing this along with homecoming. So, as student council, we have decided that we have raised homecoming tickets from $10 to $12, and we did this last year as well. If students bring a food item, they receive $2 off of their ticket. And if students do not bring a food item, the $2 extra student council uses to put forward for you buying more food for this food drive and then donating all of it. And that is all.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, both of you. So we'll look forward to monthly reports to see how the year progresses. So, and again, welcome to both of you. Okay, so transitioning then to the superintendent's good news report for tonight. So to start with, we're back, which is my favorite time of the year. Love to be able to see the joy and excitement of the students and staff as we started the school year. I want to thank all of our students, families, and staff for their continued engagement and partnership as we strive to make this an impactful year of learning and growth for all. Before the school year started, Jefferson Elementary School families and community partners came together for an incredible get-to-know-you conference and back-to-school bash. Families came and met their teachers and have fun enjoying lots of activities, including face painting, a dunk tank, bicycle blenders, games, chalk art, and more. We appreciate all of the community partners that joined in this event, supporting our school community and helping our families better understand resources available to them. Carl Traeger Elementary kicked off the new year with a back-to-school assembly. Principal Mrs. G read a book about celebrating differences, and each student was given a star to decorate with what makes them special. The stars are displayed throughout the school for all to see, and of course, the annual staff lip dub was also premiered at the assembly, which is always fun for everyone to experience and enjoy. Our 4K students were also busy learning and playing, reminding us all how fun learning can be. 4Kers at Carl Traeger spent time learning about apples and exploring their classroom during our first days of school. On Monday, Oshkosh North community students led and participated in an impactful 9/11 Day of Service and Remembrance. In addition to giving back through various service projects, many of our students and staff also attended the special presentation at the EAA Museum. During the presentation, retired firefighters from the New York City Fire Department who were at Ground Zero on 9/11 told their stories. Students were honored to meet and thank these heroes for sharing their experiences. Oshkosh West High School was recently named in the U.S. News and World Report in the report's best high schools in the nation, finishing in the top 40% of the schools in the nation. This ranking evaluates approximately 18,000 public high schools across the country using school-specific data on enrollment, graduation rates, student body demographics, free and reduced lunch, location, school type, and state assessment results. The analysis also focuses on participation in and performing the challenging college-level coursework. This achievement is a testament to our students and dedication of our staff and support from the entire Oshkosh community. We know that excellence is a part of all of our school communities, and we want to lift up the hard work of our students and staff throughout the district. So congratulations to all involved in that. Students and staff at Val Phillips are also enjoying their incredible new space. In addition to growing together as a school community, these rising Phoenix have been busy learning kitchen measurements, community building in choir, and sharing lots of sweet shoes with students, as you can see. And speaking of Val Phillips, we're just a few days away from our public dedication and open house. We're excited to welcome the entire community and beyond into this remarkable space. So the event is on Sunday, September 17th. It starts at 4 p.m. with a brief program to start with, and then we are honored also to have Michael Phillips, son of the late Val Phillips, joining us and sharing a few words with our community. From a logistical standpoint, we will also be having free shuttles. Attendees are encouraged to take advantage of the shuttles to avoid parking and traffic delays around Bell Phillips. The Oshkosh shuttle the shuttle will take off from Oshkosh North and will run continuously starting at 3 p.m. until the event ends at 6 p.m. And we want to thank Culberson for being a partner to make that happen. Again, all are invited to experience this incredible space and join us in this community celebration. So we look forward to seeing everybody there. And then just a list of some of the places that I've been over the last couple weeks. So again, it's been a great start to the school year, and just want to thank everybody for their work and commitment to make our schools an engaging places.
Great. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you.
Davis. Next, we have District Administrator's supplemental reports, and we will begin with referendum and facilities secure vestibule project updates by Mr. Fox and Mr. Considine.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So I'm pleased to communicate with you tonight that our secure vestibule project has reached project completion. We had a target date of August, which we did reach. We did communicate in the past that we were behind on a couple of projects. I'm happy to report, based off of last month's information, that we were able to get Reed open in time for the first day of school, receiving students, having staff occupy that space. So as of right now, North High School, West High School, and Reed Elementary Schools were actively operating as a secure vestibule on a first day of school. Oakwood Elementary School has been occupied now for the last week. They will be available and will be open for student traffic starting Monday the 18th.
Excuse me, just a clarification. Were those vestibule projects part of the 2020 referendum?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Yep. So we have reached, again, substantial completion. There are several components related to these projects that are delayed until at some point this fall. That will be approximately the last week of September into about the middle of October. The components will not impact the use of the vestibule, use of the space, or occupancy of any of those spaces. So all the spaces are fully staffed, and they're receiving students, for the nurse's office, for mail, for staff workrooms, and we're moving forward. Contractor final punch list is ongoing throughout the month of September and into October, anticipating by the end of October we've got all components per bid, per design. A couple photos we captured of these spaces. The top two photos are Oakwood Elementary. Top left is the office receiving area. Principal's office is to the back right. Workroom and conference room are off to your right as well. The picture to the right is a picture of the conference room. The one picture we did not take is that of the workroom. There also was, related to this project, the nurse's office, which was the original office to that building that was vacated, so people could move into the receptionist, and the principal could move into this space. That vacated space was then turned into a nurse's office, and that is up and functioning right now. Reed Elementary School was a renovation, as you recall. So the lower left picture is a picture of the office proper, and you can see into the right-hand side a little peek into the vestibule, the new vestibule. Lower right is the interior vestibule doors that were built inside of the existing exterior. So you can see how people would travel into that vestibule through the office and back out to the corridor. Behind the receptionist's desk is the new principal's office, and to the left, unseen, is the nurse's office in that space. West High School and North High School, very similar scope. They received a vestibule with an attendant area. So top left is an inside look at what that vestibule looks like from the hallway. To the right is from inside the vestibule. You can see the attendance room on the back side of that picture for West High School, and right below it is the attendance area for North High School. They function exactly the same. They look just great in that environment and very inviting. Plenty of room for people to pass by on the inside of that space as well. So I thought they turned out quite well. So moving on to Menominee Elementary School. Quite quickly, we're transitioning. This is where we'll spend the next year of our time. Work completed in the last 30 days, just kind of summing up what was done over the course of the summer and sort of setting the table for our future conversations. Site has been cleared, fenced, tracking pad, which is really just a rocky entrance for large trucks to enter and exit the construction site. All of that has been installed. All the underground utilities have been brought onto the site to service the building. Future West parking lot has been excavated. Gravel base has been installed to support future asphalt. Construction of the gym foundation and the CMU or block wall has begun. And actually, as of today, all 4 walls are at their proper elevation for their roof line. So that's how quickly things have changed from my submission for your report. Gravel base for the first floor slab has begun, and actually they're pouring foundation walls for the first floor. That building has sections A, B, C, and D. We'll work that language out as we get through future board meetings, whether we're talking through first and second grade or kindergarten. So the project is on schedule, is on budget, and is really taking advantage of the nice weather. Good amount of work has been completed this summer, and they're really doing quite well. So,
Jim, can we, just before, well, I guess as we look at that, just one thing to think about, again, the progression. So we'll come back with our monthly updates on here, but we're looking at substantial completion beginning of August. So similar to a Val Phillips timeline, right, as far as when we get to next August?
Right. So in my board report, I included, it is a substantial completion of August 8th, 2024 is contractually what we're targeting for Myron on this project.
Okay.
If I can add to that, similar to what we experienced on the Val Phillips site, substantial completion will be occupancy and being able to get furniture and things like that inside the building. Odds are is that there will be still some miscellaneous cleanup items over those final few weeks. So a very similar process to what you experienced at Val Phillips. Hopefully a little more done, August 8th, but you'll still experience some of those cleanup items as we close out August next year.
And ultimately being able to start school
Yes.
on the first day of school.
Yep.
Yeah.
It still amazes me how large that site is once the building was gone. I know there's another one going back up, but that was just mind-blowing to see how large the site was.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the things you may or may not have seen is top left geopier installation. So underneath the entire school are geopiers. Because we had substandard soils, this is how it is going to support the school through a series of geopiers, which are holes drilled and stone filling on all the holes, and that's going to, ultimately support the poured concrete floors for the facility. There wasn't a whole lot going on, so you'll see the rest of the pictures were different looks at the south gym wall elevations and some interior pictures of the gym walls. Again, as of today, they're actually at elevation and ready for steel next week, and they're working on the first and second grade part of the building right now, which is building section A. But so the progression at the site, construction, footings, foundation walls will continue for the next several months, certainly into our next board meeting. MEP, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, rough-ins will continue as long as they're putting in block walls. We're always going to have that type of activity ongoing as well. CMU block construction, if you remember back to Val, this will be an ongoing trend as well as they work their way around the building, starting from from the gymnasium. As you see it now when you drive by, they're going to do the block installation to the west toward Grove, and then they're going to split off and work in a clockwise manner kind of south along Hazel and then back around the corner toward the west. So any questions about secure vestibules or our start to Menominee?
Mr. Kearns?
How large is the gymnasium going to be at Menominee?
It's just slightly larger than the Oak Lawn site.
That's what I was trying to compare to, so
Yeah.
slightly larger, okay.
Just slightly larger.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Mr. Nehans with the budget variance ESSER funds update.
So I will let my report stand. Being 2 months into the new fiscal year, there's not a lot to report out on budget variance at this time. Are there any questions that the board had on the report?
during your initial budget report, you had talked about just ESSER funds that are remaining as we're working through that, right?
Yes, yeah, as I had said in that report, we've got somewhere in the $3 to $3.5 million range left as we finalize what's being used in the last fiscal year. Again, that money's pretty fluid with all of those. We have until September of 2024 to expense them all. We will expense them in this next budget.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Nehans? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And next we have ICS for equity update. Dr. Coleman and Mr. Miller.
Yeah, so Mr. Miller's here. One of the advantages that we have, again, with Mr. Miller on board and Dr. Coleman on board, is to be able to increase our expertise around ICS for equity. So Dr. Coleman wasn't able to make it tonight, so he had a scheduled training that he's doing. He's a national facilitator of our ICS training, and so he had that obligation that was previous to him being hired here tonight, so he's just finishing that up. But very fortunate to be able to have his level of expertise. We've done a lot of good work around our ICS for equity framework over the last 4 or 5 years. A lot of that work continues that we've done in our building, but just like any good adult learning and student learning for that matter, as you see something for the first time, frameworks that you see for the first time and go to apply it, you have the wisdom of that application to come back to the framework and continue a back and forth process as we're moving forward. So that's the natural process I want us to think about as we're working through our ICS for equity model. It's not like a checkbox, you do this once and then all of a sudden everything will be changed. It's a continual process that we'll work through. So what we've been able to do, again, is add the expertise from a personnel standpoint to really, I think, supercharge our ability to work through the ICS for equity framework. So Mr. Miller's here tonight just to be able to provide some guidance. So in his new position, he'll be the centralized person to be able to coordinate the districts across, or coordinate our work across the system. It's one of the things in our reflections over the last couple of years. We've been doing work in all of our buildings, but it's been pretty decentralized. So as we're having some of the reflections with this new position, part of that is to have some better coordination at a system level for this work. So Mr. Miller will be overseeing that work across the system, again with the help and support of Dr. Coleman. But I wanted Mr. Miller to be here tonight just to be able to just provide a 30,000-foot overview of that centralization process and then be able to answer any questions that anybody has. So, Mr. Miller.
I have one question to start. Yes. Could you tell the public what ICS stands for?
Integrated Comprehensive System for Equity.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, good evening. I do want to start by acknowledging Dr. Kim Brown and Julie Conrad for pioneering the implementation of ICS into our district. And since the implementation of ICS, our staff have learned valuable lessons and strategies to assist in working towards closing achievement gaps for all of our students and to give our students access to high quality teaching and learning. A few things I would like to highlight from the past and current ICS work include our elementary school teachers applying high-level strategies in literacy and math in their classrooms, along with working on co-plan and co-serve teams. Our secondary teachers are implementing the unit frameworks and applying equitable standard-based grading practices, and our instructional teachers have continued training in the standards for English language development and how to embed those standards across content areas. Recently, Director of Technology Jason Schmidt, Principal at Reed Elementary Emily Eisenschenk, and myself, we attended the 3-day annual National ICS for Equity virtual conference. And lastly, professional learning to refocus our commitment to our equity work using the ICS framework was facilitated at the OASD Administrative Retreat, New Teacher Academy, and the Secondary Department Chair meeting. The purpose of these sessions was to communicate how we will use a system approach to our equity strategies and how this work will be measured using our key performance indicators, our school report cards, and the school district self-evaluation of the status of pupil non-discrimination and equality of educational opportunities report. As we continue to address our achievement gaps, We understand that we need to continue to invest in our commitment to ICS, and since the implementation of ICS, our district has undergone significant changes with many new leaders at the district level as well as the administrative levels. We have welcomed with open arms 913 employees to the district, and all of these employees have had an orientation in the ICS framework, and we are building a system so they can get a more in-depth understanding of ICS. Recognizing that our commitment to closing achievement gaps among all of our students is an ongoing endeavor, the leadership team believes that now is a very opportune moment for us to revitalize and systemize the application of ICS throughout the entire district. And to build on our previous work, we have developed a process to build additional capacity and more confidence across the district in a more systemized way. So in our pursuit of our forward momentum, our initial step involves comprehensive completion of modules at the district level under the guidance of aforementioned national trainer and facilitator of this work, Dr. Sam Coleman. An additional facet of the strategy that we are going to implement is the alignment of district leaders with specific schools to strengthen the implementation of ICS throughout. Are there any additional questions? Yes.
Dr. Herzog. I appreciate your presentation, and this was one I had requested because I just think it's important to keep this in the forefront. In 2018 and in 2021, the Board of Education had opportunities to hire new superintendents, and with those hirings, we made it very clear that closing the achievement gap and making sure we were educating all students was of paramount interest to these boards. John Ashley, who's recently retired as the executive director of the Wisconsin Association of School Boards, has defined educating all students as a moral imperative, and that's where I stand as well on this issue. I had an opportunity over the weekend to attend the board meeting of the Wisconsin Association of School Boards, where we heard from Dr. John Bales and Dr. Kathy, I think her last name is Clark, I'm just having a senior moment here. Kathy Cook, I'm sorry, not Clark. Kathy Cook's role is to orient new superintendents, and that orientation program for new superintendents extends to second and third year superintendents as well. But one of the things that piqued my interest at that meeting was the fact that they have a strong interest in educating new superintendents in the importance of educating all students and closing those achievement gaps. So it's a topic that the School Board Association is interested in, the state Wisconsin Association of School District Administrators, which is the superintendent's group, is very interested in, and obviously this board has been very interested in. So we need these students to be educated, in my mind, as best they can. They are our future leaders. They are the ones who will be making decisions when we go to clinics. They will be making decisions about repairing our cars and our plumbing and our electricity in our homes. And to me, we have to make sure that all of them are educated so they can go on to that next step after high school and be successful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions?
Oh, I'm sorry, one more.
Sure.
I'm sorry. The pupil non-discrimination evaluation, I hadn't heard of that before, but I was very interested in that because it also is not just a self-evaluation by people within the district or within the school system, but it requires input by residents and parents and guardians. I thought that was a really strong statement in there, because these are the people we serve. These are the people we need to hear from and find out how successful we're being. So I look forward to that report and to how the residents and parents and guardians give us feedback on what we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess I just have one general question. How do we use the ICS system to break down barriers, and what types of results, have we seen from that, and can we expect to see?
So from my point of view and my understanding of ICS, it will give us an opportunity to educate our educators to make sure that they are using things like asset-based language and just level the playing field for our students so that we are providing as many opportunities for equitable services as possible. As far as how the numbers will look, we will have to see what that looks like as we go through the process. And I believe we are just entering the phase of co-plan and co-serve, so we should start to be able to see some results from this relatively soon.
Okay.
Yeah, and ultimately, you know, as we've talked about, our equity is built into our KPIs. So when we're talking about increasing reading scores, math proficiencies, student engagement, like those are the spaces that we should see bumps as we look at more equitable systems across the board. So it's baked into our measures.
Mr. Carnes.
I just appreciate Dr. Herzog mentioning the community. I think in one of those reports, I think when ICS was started, it was integrated with community as well and that kind of thing. So I think it's important. It's not just educating, as you mentioned, obviously it's important to educate the teachers and that, but it's so much more. And so I think we're all in this together.
Yeah,
so.
and I'm glad you brought that up. So the ICS for Equity framework also has an Ally Academy. And so that is a community opportunity to engage in this work, have more knowledge, and be able to provide feedback. So Dr. Coleman will be re-engaging an Ally Academy. So we'll invite people that have been part of this in the past, and then also anybody that wants to engage moving forward. We'll have an opportunity to do that. So again, that's the great value. One of the great values that we have with Dr. Coleman being in our system is he has the ability to facilitate that and not add any extra cost to us. So all of this facilitation and the training and all of that is something that we can do in-house, which is a significant savings as we're moving forward. And again, the idea is that we're building, right? And so we have to learn and then apply and then learn from what we applied and come back to. So this is a cyclical process. It's really just something that that will be ongoing. So we just are really fortunate to be able to have, again, the quality of staff like Mr. Miller and Dr. Coleman to be able to lead our work moving forward.
Would it be beneficial for the school board to receive some of this ICS training or an overview or a workshop or something to that effect?
Yeah, and from my experience, typically that's part of the Ally Academy, that board members would participate at that level. I'll check with Dr. Coleman and see if he's seen anything else, across the country as he's been doing some of the facilitation in his, but that's typically where that would be. It also allows board members to hear from community members and be part of that, part of that discussion, which I think is very valuable.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up is non-agenda related public forum and agenda related public forum, and we have no one who has signed up this evening, so we will continue on with workshop. First one is fund balance with Mr. Nehant.
This is the true shot.
All right, so the finance and operations key performance indicator, a component of that is the fund balance. So within that pier, we've got fund balance, and you can see that's about 10% of the overall rating for finance and operations is based on fund balance. So just a little background on fund balance. Fund balance is really used by school districts to help us with cash flow. We don't get revenue, large portions of our revenue until January. So fiscal year starts July 1. We really don't get revenue until January. So school districts rely on what we have in fund balance and in reserves to help meet payrolls and pay bills for the beginning 5-6 months of the school year. So your fund balance, in fund balance is not cash on hand. It doesn't mean that our bank account actually has that amount of money sitting in it. It's more where we end the prior fiscal year with, as far as revenues and assets and liabilities go, more so than anything else. Sorry, going the wrong way. So why does fund balance matter? Having this balance, because we have to go the beginning 5-6 months of the fiscal year, allows us not to short-term borrow as much as what we have. And in the district, this is something that's occurred. A few years ago, we were short-term borrowing in the $13-14 million range. What you're going to approve later in the agenda is to borrow $7.6 million. So as our fund balance has grown, we've been able to reduce the amount of short-term borrowing Now, in a district our size, we more than likely will never get a fund balance amount to not short-term borrow. We would need to carry a balance closer to 25% of expenses, which would be in the neighborhood of 35 million, which seems a little too large to be carrying at this point. So in our rating, fund balance at 15 to 20% is where we would say is a 3-star. Again, I think part of the rating saying as we go up, the rating agencies would like to see it closer to 25%. There are small districts or smaller districts that will get higher in the 30% range and higher. For us, our auditor wants us to stay in that 15 to 20% range, and that's where we are trying to sit. For last year, we ended right around 17, 18%. We did use a little bit of fund balance in 22, 23. I would anticipate when we get done with the audit, that is going to be closer to 16%. But again, we still fall within the auditor's range of 15 to 20%, and staying in that area. One thing we can do to help fund balance, and this will also come in the next workshop, is continuing to invest in Fund 46. One reason that our auditor selected as we discussed fund balance and where we want to sit, one reason we landed at 15 to 20% is it makes more, it's better use of district dollars to invest in Fund 46 than our general fund balance, because we get state aid in Fund 46, so we get to capture more state money, and that fund is really going to fund our deferred maintenance and ongoing repairs in our buildings. Ideally, we'll get to a point where Fund 46 does all repairs and upcoming maintenance, and we can eliminate that aspect of our general fund and redirect that into more instructional uses. So when you combine the two right now, our fund balance in Fund 46 is in the $8 million, $8.5 million range. So really from our auditor and the business office perspective, we're looking at close to a 30 to 33% fund balance when you combine the two.
Say that again.
So when the way the auditor and I would look at things from our lens is we would combine Fund 46 with our fund balance.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're used, in essence, they're used similarly, and one we get more state aid, the other we don't. So our fund balance right now is 22.5% or 22.5 million in that range, and we have a little bit more than 8 million. Also, I was losing 24 million. I'm sorry. We're in the $30 million range for a combined total, which gets us closer to the 22 to 25% range of where the rating agencies would like us to be. Again, they will separate the two out, but for our purposes, that's really what the auditor and what I'm looking at as more of that combined. Again, we get aided for Fund 46, we get aided at 14% of that. So if we put $1 million away, we're getting 14% of that back in aid. Where if you add it to fund balance, you don't get any aid on that. That's just money that you lose aid on. So that's part of the reasoning behind why we would do that. Are there any questions on that?
Dr. Herzog?
Thank you. Is part of the reason for the need for short-term borrowing a timing issue? That is it related to when the state provides us with the state aid and when we collect the taxes, or the city collects the taxes from the local taxpayers?
Correct. We get a small aid payment at the beginning of December, but that holds us for about a month. The tax payments we get and the bulk of the state aid payments we get occur after January. So we will go and in our typical budget variance reports, we have a graph that shows the cash flow and how that happens on a monthly basis. So right now we're at a low point. We will bottom out cash-wise, as far as our ability to have any cash to pay anything, we'll bottom that out in late October, early November. And we still have a month and a half before we get any kind of aid or property tax money in. So, and then the way like property taxes work, we can put the state aid money just in the general fund and have that pay off. Ideally, what DPI wants is your first property tax payments need to go towards your debt payments first, because you have to pay those. Those are non-negotiable. And the large payment happens March 1st. So you earmark it to your debt first, and then you can use anything after debt's paid for general fund and all the rest of your other funds funding those. So there is somewhat of an order you also have to pay. So for us, our best property tax, or our best cash flow state positions after we get the February property tax.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Nehans.
Thank you.
Facilities plan.
Good evening.
So
for our second KPI review for the evening, we are going to be looking at our facility plan 10-year outlook. And so this falls under the same core area as fund balance and accounts for 25% of this particular area is the facilities plan. And when we look at the facilities plan, the 10-year facilities plan focuses on how the district is maintaining its facilities and includes maintenance as well as replacement cycle, our timeline. We don't often think of our buildings having a life cycle, and getting into our 10-year plan makes us start thinking about what is the longevity or what should be the life cycle or replacement cycle of a building. Preventative maintenance or replacements are laid out in a very deliberate timeline. We started looking at that in 2017 when we did our first facility study, and that was completed. Items in there are often what we consider the ones that we all talk about, like roof replacements, hardscapes, boilers, floor coverings, the big facilities projects. Also, since we've had a 10-year facilities plan, we've done a lot of the projects within that with our energy efficiency pieces and when we used our funding that way. The 10-year outlook also includes the 4-phase consolidation plan that was approved in our phase 1 referendum and came out of facilities, the FAC 1.0, the Facilities Advisory Committee, and that is reducing our number of schools from 20 to 15, and so we'll review that here in just a moment. So why does this matter? The OASD needs to be safeguarding its assets and follow preventative maintenance or replacement plans. If you recall, when we did our strategic plan 1.0 and started to develop that, that was a key area that we needed to really recognize and formulate a plan back with our strategic plan 1.0. And so by putting this facilities plan into place, we are able to set a schedule to avoid those costly repairs that we are trying to work through, we were trying to work through over 5 years ago as we were going through the deferred maintenance. So with that, in our KPI, we are currently at a 4-star rating because we do have a 10-year plan. We are maintaining and reviewing that 10-year plan, and we are annually adjusting based on other needs. And we'll talk about some of those other needs that have come up outside of that 10-year plan. So our celebrations are that we do have that plan in place, it's monitored and it is updated, and we are using it. And that's the key, that you're actually using the plan that has been formulated. Mr. Nehans had talked about the Long-Term Capital Improvement Trust Fund, Fund 46. We are utilizing that, and we've been making contributions to that. The balance is discussed annually in Facilities and Finance, and we'll be continuing to do that. So opportunities for improvement, and Mr. Nehans laid that out in his fund balance presentation, is that we want to continue to add funds to Fund 46 to increase our ability to pay for and plan fully for the 10-year plan, and also receiving state aid at the same time. So when we think about the facilities plan, the part that we don't often talk about is the actual core part of this, which is the capital improvement plan. And so that plan is for scheduled maintenance, repair, renovation, and we often talk more about the replacement of buildings because that's where the big referendum projects tend to come. But it's these annual, yearly pieces that we need to be minding. And so we're doing that because it minimizes and it protects our investment, our community's investment into our facilities. So we lessen our deferred maintenance projects. We increase the life expectancies of our major assets, which are our buildings. It involves replacements, enhancements, and renovations. We'll talk about that some more. And it adds values to a building or our properties by maintaining that. Our capital improvement plan is a communication and decision-making tool, and we need to be treating that as such. And so you're going to see, as we continue to talk about facilities, we're going to be using that to make decisions going forward and making fiscally responsible decisions.
And I can just interject really quickly. So one of the goals of having the capital improvement plan to be fully functional, which we'll be building up, is that we don't get into this compression that we're currently in, that we never have to create a 4-phase facility plan, that it's just an ongoing process that has fiscal support so we can maintain our buildings, because yes, we will have some new buildings coming up in our 4-phase facility plan, but still a majority of our buildings will be buildings that have been with us for quite a while. So our ability to extend those lives and maintain those is really important. And it's one thing to have the plan, it's the other thing to have the financing for it. And that's really what the capital improvement plan provides, is that fiscal backbone to make sure that boilers, roofs, and all other things can stay contemporary, so we can extend the life of our buildings that we currently have.
Can I say something?
Sure.
Yes.
I think that's part of, as we go through the next phase of the referendum, when the community hears the next buildings that we're doing, is that what are we also doing not to put ourselves in this position again?
Mm-hmm.
And so this is a part of that same story as well as we go through the referendum. And I just want to make sure that, we're setting ourselves up, not only building these and they're going to be here for 50 years or whatever, but we're going to make sure they last for 70 years because we're going to keep the maintenance up on them. We're going to do this correctly. So.
Correct. Yeah, right now we're projecting out that we're looking at buildings having an 80-year lifespan.
That's
Because
awesome.
we're starting to take a look at that.
Thank you. I just wanted to add a couple of things from a historical perspective. I'm a history major, or minor rather, in college, and so history to me is important because it sometimes helps explain why we are in a situation that we find ourselves in. So it was in 2017, 2018, I believe, that Bray and Associates did a long-range plan of all our facilities. It was well over $100 million to repair or I think it was mainly repair various buildings throughout the district, and I see Mr. Sell nodding his head back there. So that kind of spurned the board of 2017, 2018 to be thinking long range, and it was about that same time that our activities directors appropriately came to the board and said, we need a new track at each high school. These tracks are in such bad shape that we have schools who will refuse to come and participate in track meets here. And going out and looking at those, I saw the cracks in the asphalt and the green things growing up through there, and I could understand why we couldn't do that. And so when we hired a new superintendent in 2018, the board made decisions about facilities saying we need to have a long-range plan. We can't be, and you addressed this in your report, Mrs. Conrad, of we can't be just reactionary. We have to be proactive in looking long range at what are the needs, because otherwise it's like with your house. If you let repairs go, then you've got to replace the roof at the same time you're doing the heating system and maybe the cracks in the driveway or whatever. So to spread out these projects was something that we wanted. And so Dr. Cartwright formed that Facilities Advisory Committee you were talking about, which we now call 1.0. They came to the board with a presentation in, I believe it was January 2020. We adopted that and then made the decision as a board to go to the community in November of 2020 and give them the opportunity to vote on referendum questions relative to improving our facilities and creating the 2 new ones. So that's a quick overview. I hope I haven't detracted from your presentation
Dr.
here.
Herzog, you just helped me with a great chunk of my presentation.
I'm sorry.
One thing I would add right there is that also during that time in the 2018-19, along with the facility study that was outlining all those deferred maintenance or repair costs, is we also did an enrollment study, and we were looking at that time of what does our projected enrollment look like?
Yes.
Because that added into what do we need to have facilities to meet the needs of what our projected enrollment is going to be at that time as well. So that was an awesome recap, and you got us all the way to through FAC.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to detract from your
That's okay.
report. I just got on a roll. I apologize.
I really appreciate this conversation, talking about how we're going to keep up our buildings, have a 10-year outlook so that we don't have to create a 4-year phase or a phase 4 phases of a process. I also just really want to point out, though, that at the end of this, we have 15 schools. We also have a central office, a rec department. So we still end up with about 18 buildings. And if they're lasting, what you said, 80 years, I just want the community to know that that still means that we're rebuilding. We're building a new building every 4 years.
Yep.
So yes, we're going to stay up to date on what we currently have, but the community really needs to support new buildings as often as we are doing in this long-range facilities plan.
Yeah.
I just feel like that's important.
And I think as we get through the
Be
plan,
clear.
we'll be able to do an assessment, a more accurate assessment of that. Again, we want to make sure that we're maximizing what we currently have. It's a continued process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the part of where we need to be using our capital improvement plan as a tool so that we know and we can start to budget for and say, where do we need to be planning these pieces, right? And so outlined on here is like a time frame of how we're going to do that annually, and using the Facilities and Finance Committee to be able to communicate more with the board as far as when we're doing those projects, what that costs and those outlooks are going to look like. You're going to receive a workshop in May previewing the summer projects, because that's when we usually do the majority of projects, because students aren't in school, or the majority of students aren't in school, and the review of that and really the estimated plans, because there's going to be items that are going to come off the plan and items that are going to go on the plan based on, for example, upcoming here right now, we are conducting surveys and audits of our hardscape and roofing so that we can prioritize off that plan what has to come, what has to come first for safety reasons, et cetera. We're going to meet on the outcome of that survey, and then we'll once again prioritize those needs. Annually, our capital improvement plan projects are between 1.1 and 1.3 million. So when Mr. Nehans was talking about the fund balance and saying how much do we want to be placing into Fund 46 annually, that's where that $1 million starts to match up, and we're actually capturing that 14% of state aid. This is often asked about boiler replacements, because this is a very large, pricey item. In that capital improvement plan, the first boiler replacements are targeted for 2027, and then on a regular cycle after that. So once again, planning out that replacement cycle. And Reed and Oakwood are right now the first ones up to be in that cycle coming up in 2027. So giving you some Fund 46 celebrations that have been added into the capital improvement plan based on that are our Oshkosh North and Oshkosh West turf fields. Both North and West are very proud of those facilities. We've also been able to do district-wide instrument and replacement schedule. We don't often think of like capital items always as, we think of them like as the, roofs and hardscape, et cetera, but we do have some pricey equipment that is considered capital. And then all of our capital improvement projects this school year were paid out of Fund 46. So those are definitely celebrations with that.
Excuse me, when you say instrument, could you tell me how you're defining that? Is that musical instruments? Is it science instruments? There are different kinds of instruments.
Yes, musical instruments.
Thank
So
you.
it's really, we've been working with our music department on having like a schedule and really upkeeping our investment when it comes to musical instruments, and some of them are well over $5,000 within that capital and non-capital.
Charlotte?
Sorry, may I say something? I would just like to express how grateful the music students are for that. I myself have played violin since I was very little, and I know all of the music teachers at both North and West are incredibly grateful for all of the new instruments we've received.
Sweet.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Charlotte.
great.
That's awesome. So, impact on students immediately. That's awesome. So, as Mr. Neahans had outlined and had talked about in the annual budget hearing, as well as in his fund balance piece, we want to maintain our current fund balance levels and continue to invest in Fund 46 so that we can be constantly funding and fueling our capital improvement plan. We want to build up Fund 46 to the point where we can fund all of our annual capital improvement projects to that point. We're predicting out it's going to take us approximately 10 years as we start to invest that so that it could be self-sustaining. And based on our current 10-year capital improvement plan, we're going to determine what that annual investment needs to be. So as the numbers start to solidify for this year, we're going to build out what that looks like. And as Mr. Neahans had indicated, we're at approximately $8 million currently in Fund 46. So we're going to pause there because this will be like the intermission. And questions on the capital improvement plan. So this is one part. We're going to get into the next part.
Dr. Herzog?
Thank you. I don't have a question. I just want to thank you for this report. I think you've done a good job with this, and I apologize if I took away some of your thunder. But I also wanted to point out that in addition to the district-wide musical instrument replacement schedule, Mrs. Wyman and Mrs. Davis spearheaded an effort in the spring to bring more funding into the schools for music equipment and for art needs. And so I was very pleased to run into Andy Hutchinson recently, who was carrying musical instruments into Tipler one day. And I don't know if they were district funds or what Mrs. Wyman and Mrs. Davis headed up, but everybody was very excited to see those instruments. So I know that we have instruments that are way older than our students, in some cases way older than our administrators, and so it's important. And some of those instruments are still in good shape, but some of them could use updating.
Yeah, but to continue on with that, think about that how our staff have been such good stewards and caretakers of our community investments, and so that is our goal, to continue to do that, whether it's facilities, instruments, etc., to be really good caretakers of our investments.
Thank you.
All right. So going on to this next part here is we were going to do a little bit of facilities history, going through FAC 1.0 into FAC 2.0 and where we are today. And so we've already recapped all the way through facilities FAC 1.0. And just to spur our memories here, in February of 2020, the school board unanimously voted to approve this right up here, which is our 4-phase long-range facilities plan that consolidates our buildings from 20 to 15. In the March of 2020, our school board had unanimously selected Bray Architects to work with us as partners. In June 2020, we workshopped on the facilities needs and the fund options for this coming up. For this particular piece, and in July 15th of 2020, the board decided on facilities funding recommendations, which led to the referendum in November of 2020, leading to this. So in our four-phase consolidation plan, this is updated from the last time that you've seen the infographic here to include the names. Like in the past, when you've seen this infographic, it's had new middle school or new elementary school, so all of the names and the pieces have been updated to reflect that four-phase plan. So we are, and we'll talk more about each of the phases here, but that infographic is really the anchor for how we're going to discuss and describe the four phases. So first off, we are just about completed with phase one. So in phase one and in that referendum piece, there were capital improvement projects that were included along with operational referendum and then also the new builds for now Val Phillips and Menominee. So you can see up there the capital improvement projects included HVAC, plumbing, roofs, electrical, etc., for all of those schools that are listed there. So when we are talking about which schools were touched within that referendum, all of the schools listed there had capital improvement projects. Over to the right, when we talked about safety and security improvements, that was another piece of the November 2020 referendum completed in the summer of 2021. You can see the security improvements, and those are those secure vestibules. And then just now completed, as Mr. Fox had indicated, where Oakwood, Reed, North, and West were completed in those secure entry projects. And you can see that there was a gap in time between 2021 and 2023. And remember, we had those pieces with inflation. And so we had asked the board about, we want to defer to 2023 to complete out the secure vestibule so that we made sure that we could have every single school having those security improvements.
I think we also had an issue with bids in 2022, if I remember correctly, where the board policy requires at least two.
Correct.
And I believe in at least one or more of these cases, Mr. Nehans is more up on that than I am. We only had one, and so we chose to wait not only because of inflation, but because we only had received one bid.
That's correct.
Yep. So finishing out that phase, what I don't have up there is this speaks for itself. So phase one is completion of Val Phillips Middle School. And just as in the superintendent's good news report, we invite you to learn, we invite you to our public dedication, but also I'm asked quite often is like, where can you see the information about our facilities plan? Where is that information? You can learn more about our district's ongoing construction projects, the facility planning, the work, past referendums, if you visit www.oshkosh.wi.us/facilities. It's right there on our main district webpage. So I'm asked that quite a bit, so you can go right there to learn about the historical aspects along with upcoming planning and work. So one thing that we had talked about in this referendum in the building and consolidating in the four phases is talking about capturing efficiencies. And so we've done some calculations as far as, what have we truly captured in our operating budget by building schools, because we had also discussed that there is an optimal size for schools. When you have small schools, there's not always the services or the efficiencies that you see. There's pros and cons. So with larger elementary, with a larger middle school, here is our captured efficiencies. So we know that there's improved services that can't be quantified, but we know we have improved services and efficiency because we have 16 staff members that are not traveling every single day. Mm-hmm. So services are right there on site. We also had a reduction in the number of school sites covered by 2 or more positions. So we may still have traveling staff, but they're only going to 2 sites rather than 3 or 4. We have classroom and professional efficiencies. In other words, we downsized or reduced 4.1 full-time equivalents in our classroom or our teacher FTE. And you can see the dollar amount with that. And then we also have support staff efficiencies. And so that's a reduction of 4.8. And so overall, our estimated annual operational efficiency for Val Phillips is $609,500. So
So that's a significant number.
Yes, it
I
is.
just want to draw everybody's attention to that. Part of what our commitment was to the community is to right-size based on our enrollment projections and come out of our consolidation in stronger fiscal position, right? These are annual savings, so over $500,000 a year, every year, again, that we can take a look at, and when we're building up Fund 46 to do our long-term capital improvement projects, this is money that can be allocated towards that space. We anticipate, and Mr. Conrad will get to Menominee Elementary School, but we also anticipate more savings because you're not combining 2 schools, you're combining 3 schools in the next part of our consolidation process. That number will be more for efficiencies for that particular setup. So we'll continue to track that, but from a community standpoint, that's a really important number because that is, to me, the real genius and insight behind the board and the community supporting this type of referendum is we are becoming stronger because of that, more efficient and stronger, not only better services, but more fiscally responsible, where we can use that money to make sure we can extend the life of buildings and provide stronger services.
And if I could just say something else about the improved service, that service to each one of our students and the consistency in the service that we are able to provide. If someone is in need, we have that person at that building all the time.
Correct. Yeah. And like you said, that's the beauty of it, because it's not just efficiency, it's improved service for our students.
Well, it's the sweet spot between having the local schools like we had previously and having them fully staffed with everything available, as you said. So that's awesome.
Dr. Herzog.
Thank you. It's also very attractive to staff when we're trying to attract and retain staff, if they can be in fewer buildings, if they can be in one building rather than have to travel between or among sites. That's one way to help maintain our quality staff in our buildings, because if they can find a job in another district where they are in one building only, that can be more attractive than staying here, as good as our district is, but they don't like that travel.
So coming up here, we just had the groundbreaking celebration in August for Menominee Elementary School, and we will be open in the fall of 2024. And so, with the completion of Menominee Elementary School, that will close out phase 1 of the consolidation plan. So going forward in this, we are looking at going into phase 2. But prior to phase 2, the board had put together FAC, Facilities Advisory Council 2.0, and that Facilities Advisory Committee was tasked to assess co-curricular facility needs, because we've been talking a lot about instructional spaces, but we also know that we have other spaces, performance spaces, that we really want to look at for our students. So from January to June of 2022, the FAC 2.0 met and offered recommendations, and then in October of last year, October of 2022, the workshop was given to the board as far as the facilities FAC 2.0's recommendation. So that's not listed up here, but we will be talking about when we start to come into phase 2. So if you start to take a look at the chart here, the majority of phase 1 is touching or impacting the North feeder patterns, the North District feeder patterns. As we go into phase 2, we're going to be talking more about the feeder patterns that go into West High School for phase 2. And then keep in mind, phase 3 is looking at the full replacement of Oshkosh West High School, and phase 4 would be looking at Oshkosh North High School. So let's talk about FAC 2.0 and where does that fit into phase 2, and we'll do more detail in phase 2. So when the Facilities Advisory Committee 2.0 looked at this, there were 4 needs that came out of this. And as you can see, the 2 that rose to the top when we talked about the 4 different recommendations was a community recreation center, like an indoor practice facility that could be used as an indoor practice facility, as well as a performing arts center at North High School. Right now, those 2 priorities we have to be determined for the community recreation center. we are looking at the Performing Arts Center being included in Phase 2. So in Phase 2, our updated summary of what this would look like for the west side would be, one, would be continuing on with our consolidation plans, and we would do a west side middle school that would be rebuild South Park Middle School, and convert Perry Tipler Middle School into a professional development center and serve other OASD needs. So we would be repurposing that building. And then West Side Elementary consolidation. We would expand Oakwood, Traeger, Franklin. And when we say expansion, keep in mind that expansion is going to also have to mean what does that facility look like, and what does that mean for like modern learning environments for those facilities at the same time? Because one thing we want to think about is the flow of the learning environment and making sure that like we're not just taking a piece of the building and adding it on to add additional students. What does truly accommodating 600 students look like in each of those areas? Because it's really going to be about accommodating and optimizing their learning environment. Then converting Shapiro STEM Academy into a OASD pre-K center. So when you hear about our converting our schools or consolidating our schools from 20 to 15, that 15 is we used to say 14, but 15 is that pre-K center. And so having those efficiencies of having pre-K, like 4K and early childhood, all in one spot where we can provide services for families and our newest learners to the Oshkosh Area School District. And then we would close or seek to sell Roosevelt Elementary. And then for FAC 2.0, adding in the North High School Performing Arts Center. So with that, we would be anticipating a referendum to start to do this work for April of 2025. And the total estimated cost to complete these projects, and these are very rough numbers, is we would be looking between $172 million and $175 million. Go ahead.
So an
Dr. Davis.
important part of this process again has been looking at. It's one thing to be able to have a plan, which is nice, and have some nice visuals. It's another thing to be able to look at what a reasonable process is to be able to finance this type of investment, right? And so part of what Drew has been working on and now collaborating with Julie is making sure that we have a reasonable plan for our taxpayers to be able to work through this process, because that takes time and it takes timing. Part of the value of having a 4-phase plan is that you can see the sight line to the end of the plan, and that you can look at what your financing impacts are at each phase along the way, and that needs to be staggered. So you can't just do necessarily one year, one the next year. So there's a big process to that. So Drew has spent a lot of time over the last couple of years being able to continue to evolve, working with the board on debt retirement to be able to save interest, and then also setting up where these phases will land as we're moving forward. So one of the things that we also have to remember that is included in the 4-phase facilities plan is the operational referendum that we have supporting our technology infrastructure. And so that is not, that's not so that's an operating referendum that comes up that has a deadline to it. So right now, that operating referendum rolls through 2030. And so what we have to make sure when we're thinking about this 4-phase plan, that as we're going to referendums, you'd want to sync up any capital project referendums with that operational referendum. So you're not going to referendum 1 year for an operational budget increase, and then the next year you're going for a capital project. You'd want them to be on the same ballot, very similar to like was done in 2020. So that's how you'd want to sync that in. In order to do that, what we took a look at is our 4-phase plan and how that timing rolls with our ability to finance the plan with a reasonable impact, if not zero, a very reasonable impact to taxpayers, and be able to complete both our capital projects and roll in our operational plan. So previously, if you've looked at what our 4-phase facility plan was and our phases and our timing for phases 2 and 3, we had phase 2 at 2026 and phase 3 at 2030. What that did not allow us to do then is sync up the operational question with phase 3, because our current operational referendum is up in 2030. So we would have had a gap, because the vote in 2030 would be in November, would be in the fall. So we would have had a budget gap there that would put us in a very compromised position. So what the proposal is tonight, is a part of a difference from tonight from previous presentations, is to be able to look at moving up the referendum timelines for phase 3 to sync up with that operational timeline in April of 2029, and then have similar spacing then, so design it backwards to phase 2, because the financing spacing works, and Drew's been working on that, to have phase 2 then be on the ballot in April of 2025. So remember, in odd years, there's no fall election. So if you're going to referendum in a fall year, it needs to be April, which would sync up with the school board elections as you would work forward. So that's a change from what we've looked at historically. But I wanted just to explain to the board and to the community the why behind that. It's very purposeful, and it still is within the guidelines of us being fiscally responsible from a taxpayer standpoint to make sure we, as much as we can, minimize the impact of what this plan is. And so Drew's done a great job of that, again, with the board's support of our prepayment of debt. We've set ourselves up very nicely to be able to accomplish the plan. What you'll also see from the timeline that Mrs. Conrad put up there is it's also an ambitious plan, in that by the time you're working through each phase, there's not a lot of time in between those phases. So part of what we've also done is look at what is the capacity of our facilities department, our project manager, to be able to do this work. So that's the conversations that we've currently had. We feel confident, based on our experience from Bell Phillips and all the projects that we've had going, that this plan is a plan that is sustainable. It's ambitious, but it's also sustainable. So not only is it fiscally responsible from a taxpayer standpoint and a tax impact, but also our ability to deliver the top quality type of buildings and services that we can for our system. We believe that this timeline is something that will deliver that. The advantage certainly is that you would get to phase 3 quicker than we had originally thought. And with Neenah High School standing about 12 miles from where we're sitting right now, I think West High School is a space that competitively allows us to be able to maintain our competitiveness in the region. But we've got to go step by step, and we have to make sure, again, that we're having our eyes on the making sure that it's fiscally responsible as we're moving forward. So this is a very deliberate plan. I will say, again, it's the wisdom of the board back in 2017 and 2020, and this board, these plans are very far and few between when you're looking at school districts. And so I just want to compliment the board and the community for the continued support of this plan, because this will make a significant difference for our community, our ability to attract professionals to our community, and our ability to be able to make sure that our kids have the best educational spaces around. When we get done with this plan, I will put our spaces up with anywhere, certainly in our region. So.
Yeah. So, one of the bullet points I have up here is we are building a legacy of high-quality facilities that has long-term sustainability and that is fiscally conservative. We're keeping all those in mind, and how can you argue that? And it's setting a roadmap for future boards and for future staff to follow. So we're not in that situation that we were in 2016, 2017 prior to that.
So just to put a bow on both presentations, kind of a first half and second half. Yeah. Again, a recap. What this is working on is making sure that we don't get into this compression again, right? That we have a long-term capital improvement plan that sustains our buildings for as long as we can have them go, and we don't get into this compression, and we have this generational turnover of buildings that we need right now to right-size our buildings into the size of district that we are. And that we anticipate to be for the near future. So I appreciate Mrs. Conrad's work in her new position as operations. To pull from curriculum to operations is a big move. So I appreciate your work and learning curve on this, and continue to appreciate both Drew's work on the financial aspect of it, and the incredible job that Jim Fox has also done up to this point and will continue to do, making sure that our buildings are built on time, on budget, and the community will get a taste of that on Sunday afternoon, which is going to be a wonderful celebration.
Questions? Anyone?
Having been part of the board that approved the long-range facilities plan, I'm a little bit biased, and so I'm just going to say that right away. But one thing I think that is worth noting about this plan is the transparency of the plan. We have been 100% transparent in every phase of what we're doing and when we're doing it. And pointing out the efficiencies, I think also is critical to the community to understand where we were coming from with this long-range planning process. And I just wanted to draw attention to the fact that we have put the potential for a referendum out there in 2025, and that has always been part of our long-range facilities plan. So this isn't a deviation. This is following the plan that the board approved years ago. So, being devil's advocate, my question is, if a taxpayer would say, you're planning so long ahead of time, why does the burden have to go to the taxpayer? Why can't the school district find the money? Why do we have to go to the community? And I'm asking this question for the greater good, because that's the number one question we get all the time, is why do we have to go to the taxpayer? So would you mind addressing that for me really quickly?
Yeah, I can work through that. So our operational budget and the budget that we get from the state and from local taxpayers is our operational budget. So our ability to be able to service our students. So anything that we would look at as far as big capital improvements, especially when you're looking at new construction, consolidating and new construction, is far beyond what we would have allocated as part of the regular operational budget. That's the infrastructure that's been set up by the state legislature. That's how school districts work. So any school district in the state of Wisconsin would work along those lines, and it's being able to get approval from the taxpayer then when you get to that point that gives you the authority to be able to levy that money to make this type of plan and those consolidations and to get those efficiencies. Then that needs permission by the taxpayers through the referendum vote. So it's a very, very typical process. It's just the way the structure is set up.
And of course, I know that, and I've even had legislators ask me though, like, oh, this brand new schools, they're flush with money, they're getting more state money, why do they have to have a referendum? So I ask that just because I know that's our number one question, and we do not get funding from the state for new schools. We do not. So that has to come from our community.
Yes.
On behalf of Oshkosh North Choirs, we can honestly say thank you for being able to do a new auditorium, and I'm very happy to say that my little sister will get to enjoy that. So thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
So, Ms. Solange.
Yes, so I'll start with a question. I noticed that turning Traeger Elementary and Oakwood Elementary into schools that can accommodate 600 students, which I think is appropriate and needed. But I noticed there's not anything about Traeger Middle School. So is the current Traeger Middle School set up to handle that increase? I'm seeing a thumbs up.
Yes, correct. And so when you think about, so if we are replacing and rebuilding South Park to accommodate more students, and so Traeger Middle School is already accommodated. So when you start to look at optimal size middle schools, you want to be somewhere between 7 and 10 tracks. What that means by is like 7 or 10 homerooms. Think about that for like a grade level, per grade level. And Traeger's already set up to do that. South Park needs to be adjusted to be able to do that. And through our enrollment projections, we're very comfortably be able to split Tipler Middle School and do some rebounding, redistricting in order to accommodate the students in there. So, So Traeger, through the capital improvement plan, there'll be like improvements and things that need to be addressed coming up with Traeger, and I believe Traeger Middle School, like in our roofing audit, that their roof is going to be coming up, or parts of their roof is going to be coming up as part of that capital improvement project. Because lo and behold, like Traeger's an older building than we think it is.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
but yes, we're going to be able to accommodate that. When you start to look at the elementary schools, you want to be anywhere from a 4 to 6 track would be optimal for efficiencies. So
Yeah.
that's the size.
I'm sitting here realizing, that for a long time in this city, Traeger has been our newest school, one of the nicest schools in the community. And when we're through with phase 2, both of the other middle schools will be newer.
Correct.
And that actually really excites me. Even though my kids go to Traeger Middle School, it excites me that all the middle schoolers will have buildings built for this century, for their generation. And I think about the compression that Dr. Davis spoke to, of we're building a lot of schools right now. But again, speaking to the fact that for a long time, Traeger, which is 25 years old, has been the newest school. That's why we're building so many right now. If you do the math, if we've got to build a new school every 4 years, we're like 6 behind. Although we're not anymore. We got halfway there. We have 3 new ones since Traeger. None of that is even in my notes. That's just me like spitfiring things right now. I'm so passionate about facilities. For people who don't know, I was a high school teacher and a middle school teacher, so I taught at 2 different buildings. And what I saw is that building design and layout impacts student learning, negatively or positively. Either way, it's not neutral. Building facilities are not neutral. They either impact student learning they impact student learning either in a positive way or in a negative way. I think there's data also to prove that. I'm not so much a data person. I wasn't a math teacher. I was an English teacher, so I'm a story person. But one of the biggest ways that happens, honestly, is just how students feel. Students feel valued when they attend a school that is nice. It doesn't have to even be new. In fact, the nice school that I taught at was built in 1931. The one that was not as nice was built in 1970. So it's not even about years. It's about design and upkeep. And I just wanted to point out in the Vel Phillips video that we've shared, I don't know how many people have seen that, you hear that from one of the students, that they feel valued going to Vel Phillips more than they did Webster and Merrill. So I just really want to hit that point home. And Ms. Conrad, you actually spoke to, I took all these notes of things I wanted to say, and you spoke to it when you talked about we're not just slapping additions on these elementary schools, we're going to make sure they can accommodate 600 students, because that is one of my concerns. When I think about how much school designs impact student learning, I think Vel Phillips is the perfect example of having a learning tower, a learning space that is not surrounded by or intermixed with all of the other things like the gym and the choir room and the main office and the library. And Vel Phillips is such a good example. Carl Traeger is too, of how both the elementary and middle school side, you go in and there's the learning wings, whether it's towers like Vel Phillips has, or wings like Traeger has, or wings like Oaklawn and Jefferson. A lot of our school buildings have the right design to really positively impact student learning. I just have concerns that some of them don't. So I look forward to, as you said, making sure that when we do these additions, we don't just slap on extra classrooms, but we make sure the buildings are designed to accommodate students and to give them the same modern day learning environment that all the kids across our community are going to have pretty soon, even if their building isn't brand new. It's like I said, it's not about the year that the building's made. It's about taking care of it and being mindful in the design. Gosh, I think I covered just about everything. Yeah, I won't hit my third point. That's all right. It's all good. I'm done.
Mr. Carnes, did you have something?
Sure, why not? Sorry if somebody said this already, but we saw what money we're saving per year on Vel Phillips, and I keep seeing stories that we tell as we go into the next phase for that referendum, that we can reasonably estimate that we're going to save at least $500,000 going from South Park and Tipler down to South Park. You know, so like there's stories that we can already build that I'm hoping that we're using all of these pieces. Like that's a huge piece that the community wants to see as to how that made us more efficient and we can save money at the same time.
And improve services at the
Yep.
same
That's
time.
the-
And I
that's
think
the
to me,
key.
that's the win.
I meant that with
that's the win.
with efficiencies was
Correct.
that part of that, yes.
Right, but I think sometimes when we think efficiencies, we immediately think of like downsize or
Yeah.
reduction.
No,
And that's not it.
yeah.
It's like, how can we be efficient and improve our services and facilities for
Exactly.
kids?
Thank you for clarifying.
Anything else? Thank you very much. That was a wonderful presentation, a wonderful reminder, and something to look forward to. Okay, next up, consent resolution agenda. For the consent agenda, the board has been furnished with background material on each item or as discussed at a previous meeting. These will be acted on with one vote without discussion. If a board member wants to discuss any item, it will be pulled out of the consent agenda and will be voted on separately. Is there a motion?
Go
Second.
ahead.
Carnes and
Salaji.
Call the roll.
Herzog.
Aye.
Carnes.
Aye.
Salaji.
Aye.
Gray.
Aye.
Wyman.
Aye.
Carlin.
Aye.
DeWitt.
Aye.
Resolution carries.
Thank you. Next are individually considered resolutions. The first one is the approval of the 2023-2024 budget.
So moved.
Second. Carnes and DeWitt.
Call the roll.
No, we have
Please.
to-
Discussion.
Oh, discussion.
Aren't you going to discuss?
Yep, I said discussion.
Does anybody want to discuss?
Did we
Does anyone want to
do that
discuss?
already?
Then call the roll.
I don't have anything I want to ask or talk about in the budget, but.
Call the roll.
Right. Carnes.
Aye.
Salaji.
Aye.
Gray.
Aye.
Wyman.
Aye.
Carlin.
Aye.
DeWitt. Aye. Herzog.
Aye.
Resolution carries.
Next resolution is authorizing temporary borrowing in the amount of approximately $7,600,000, issuance of tax and revenue anticipation promissory notes, and participation in the PMA levy and aid anticipation notes program.
So moved, Barb.
Second. Salaji.
Discussion?
I think Drew was pretty clear as to
Yeah.
the importance of this and how it keeps us rolling, so I don't have any more than that.
Call the roll, please.
Salaji.
Aye.
Right.
Aye.
Wyman.
Aye.
Carlin.
Aye.
DeWitt.
Aye.
Herzog.
Aye.
Carnes.
Aye.
Resolution carries.
Thank you. Request for future agenda items?
I don't know if this is something that needs to go to an agenda or we just need to have a discussion. I know that we had, I had talked to you, Dr. Davis, about potentially having the agenda posted on our social media. I think that we talk often about, you know, sharing our story and being transparent and getting engagement and, you know, having our community you know, understand why we're doing some of the things that we're doing and voting on. And I would maybe propose, I don't know if it's something that we need to vote on, but I think that, you know, having our agenda posted publicly on our social media where there are a lot of people that are looking for, we're talking about sharing our story, telling our story. I think that, you know, the board as a whole and what we are doing here is very important to be part of our story as well. So I don't know if that is just something that we're able to do, if it needs a vote.
I think we'll just be able to do that.
Okay.
I'll talk to Katie Neiman and be able to do that starting for the next meeting. And we'll put a link. You know, we can put a link to the agenda.
Yeah,
so the materials are all there.
it seems that the city council gets some pretty good traction with it.
Sure.
I noticed that they started doing that. So, thank you.
Easy enough to do.
Yeah, thank you. Great suggestion.
I had one thing.
Yes.
I do not see it on the future agenda item, but I had mentioned last time that I thought there was an opportunity for some professional development of the school board regarding roles and responsibilities. Is that still on there?
Dr. Davis.
Funny you say that.
Awesome.
So under
Okay.
announcements, I do have an update on that.
Okay,
So I
thank
don't know
you.
if there's any other future agenda items.
We good on future agenda?
Okay.
Okay, so my announcement was going to be, Sherry Wertz had reached out to Ted Knightsky about the board training. So Ted is available, and I just wanted to put this on board members' radar, and Sherry can follow up with an email just to confirm. But Ted is available to do the training January 11th, which is a Thursday, like 5 or 5:30 is what he thought would work for a start time. So Thursday, January 11th, with Ted Knightsky around 5 o'clock. So if you could just put that on your calendars or take a look at that. Sherry will follow up with an email just to confirm. But if that should be a good spot, and I think that'll be a good chance to get regrounded and.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Forward, so,
I'm
yep.
sorry, what was that date?
It was Thursday, January 11th at 5 p.m.
Thank you.
Yep. And again, Sherry Wertz will send a email reminder out, and just to make sure if that doesn't work for somebody or we need to retool that, we can work with Ted's schedule.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other announcements? I have one announcement. I hope that we've thanked the community a lot tonight, but I don't think we can thank the community enough for their support in the referendums, in financing or starting the financing of all of the instruments, the musical and the art equipment that was able to be added. The community really came together to give the district a jump start, and I want to thank them for that. I also hope that the community comes out in droves to see Vel Phillips, to see where their tax dollars are going, to celebrate what Oshkosh is doing for education. This is a change that we have never, not never, that we haven't seen in 25 years in this community, and it is an absolute game changer. And I hope everyone comes to the open house and gets to see what education and wonderful learning spaces can look like in our community. It's from an economic development standpoint, it is so fantastic. When we have good schools, we have people that come here, that live here, that work here, and all of the economic development starts with schools. So I'm very, very excited about it and excited about the open house. So thank you.
Well said.
Any other announcements? Thank you very much for attending. I hope it was beneficial for you. We always like to have student input, and we really appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Okay, now we will be adjourning to executive session to deliberate or negotiate the purchase of public properties, investing in public funds, or conducting other specified business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. The topic we are discussing tonight is Washington Elementary School request for proposal process discussion.
Second.
Carlin and Wright.
I tried to be loud.
Thank you for coming.
Right.
Chris?
Yeah. Yes.
Wyman.
Aye.
Carlin. Aye. DeWitt. Aye. Herzog.
Aye.
Carnes.
Aye.
Salachi.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned in executive session.
Thank you.
Aye.